Hey guys, welcome back. Joe here again, scalefreak.com, coming to bring you another install video on Project JK. For this one here, we're installing the Knight Customs Exo Cage as well as the roof rack, as I said, available from Knight Customs. Check this bad boy out from all angles. This thing is absolutely a beauty. Installation is actually not that bad, and the product is absolutely fantastic. But you know what? Check out the video, check out how it's done. First, let's start with the packaging itself. Of course, being Shapeways products, it's coming in a couple plastic bags with their logo on it. Of course, Knight Customs has these products printed for you directly from here. I just want to give a shout out as well to anybody who's in Europe. You can get it directly from Europe as well, so you don't have to pay the extra shipping fees, which is phenomenal. It is 2 units itself, right? So first, let's talk about the cage. The cage itself, very well detailed, nice and strong too, actually. It is a 3D printed product, so it does have some flex to it, but I think that this thing actually will stand up against a lot of the bumps and grinds against your trees and against your rocks. Of course, it won't, if you subject this thing to a fall down a cliff, it may have a different opinion of how well it wants to hold up to that, but any product is going to do that as well. So this is a nice setup, very well built, nice and big. Like, look, I can fit my hand almost in it, and I have big hands. The second is, of course, the Exo rack itself, which is an entirely different product. I've already trimmed these pieces out. I do want to make sure that I caution you, though, be careful when you're trimming the parts out, because at first it looks like it's just these units here that connect onto your rack, and this just might be some extra pieces, but that's not the case at all. This is actually your rack, and these are the supporting pieces. So when you trim them off, make sure you leave that little nubby on there. You'll see the screw holes down here as to where it screws into your body or glues into your body, depending on what you want to do. But you have to make sure those nubbies stay on there because they actually fit into the side of the rack, like so. So please, I do need to caution you again, watch the video a couple times if you want to make sure. You need to make sure that you do not wreck those parts. They do need to fit into this thing just like this. It's like a transformer. How fun is that? Come on, we all had transformers. So there you can see how that Exo rack comes together and this guy here. Now, I do want to be very cautious on something. Cautious isn't the word I want. Maybe very, just a heads up. You're going to want to spend most of your time of this installation making sure you can fit this exactly where you want it to be. Before you hard mount anything, make sure you mock it up and you soft mount all of these parts to make sure it is exactly what and where you want it to be. See, for me, if I line it up here and make sure it's lined up with the side of the vehicle and on the back like that, you'll see that it fits exactly, well, you know what, exactly where I want it to be. There may be a little space left and right, just lock it down because this thing here is going to screw into the top of your shell. You want to make sure that this is exactly where you want it to be. Spend the time here, guys. Before you post any screw holes, spend the time, make sure it's lined up, make sure it's straight. That way you're not popping a bunch of different holes and you're not starting to ream screw holes out that you don't need to be done. And then, of course, once you get this rack exactly centered to where you want it to be, this guy here just screws on the top, just like that. So now you'll have your Exo cage, which, again, you can have as a standalone unit if you wanted to, and then you can add the rack to this. And right there. So that's pretty much how it would look when I'm done. But I am going to spend a lot of time making sure that this rack is mounted precisely where I want it to be. That way I only have to put the screw holes once and I go from there. This is going to take me a bit. I'll be right back. I usually get the question later, so I actually wanted to address it early as to exactly how I get everything to line up and keep it straight. Now, there is no magic trick about it. It's just painter's tape, really. But I do want to kind of give you a heads up. Remember, these are 3D printed products, which means they won't have threading inside the holes. So what I typically like to do is I like to get a big, gigantic plastic screw. Let me just pull one out here. Something like this guy to pre-hog the hole, just to make sure that it's cleaned out. And then I go and use a fine thread, like what I would actually use in order to get the hole exactly set to the type of screw that I'm going to put in there. Now, in making that hole larger, it actually enables me to use power tools, a drill, with a tiny, tiny, tiny little tip on it just to drill myself a couple leader holes. And the reason why I do this is because with the body reamer, it does get a little bit more difficult later, and this thing may try to move on me if I try to start pushing really hard when it comes to getting this guy in there to mark the paint. So using the sharpest little bit I can get, I just, as up and down as I possibly can, just give myself a little tiny leader hole. And that's it. Very, very tiny amount of pressure onto the body itself as long as you're using a good bit. And the idea behind that is to give yourself a hole to start. This doesn't move. The body may move a bit. You can see the body's moving, but the rack itself is taped to the body. It's not going anywhere. So wherever I screw these holes, that's where they're staying. And of course, because I did want to make sure that this thing was lined up exactly how I wanted it, I did get this little bad boy out here in order to make sure that everything was within a couple tenths of itself measured throughout the body. So let me get 1 second. Just going to finish with this thing. Now that I have all the screw holes pre-bored out, I use the drill bit, and then I use the screws that I was actually going to put through it just to make sure I have the correct size. I go ahead and use the body reamer just to kind of hog out the holes and make sure you get all the extra burr off of it. Try to keep yourself a nice sharp body reamer, and if you want, even make the hole a little tiny bit bigger than what the screw is going to be so that it threads through a lot easier. Now, for my purpose, what I'm working with here, I wanted to use black-headed button head screws. Most of the extra hardware that I have is all stainless, and I didn't want to have a silver button head on top of this rack. So what I've done is I've grabbed, they're all too long, but I've grabbed whatever screws that I could manage out of the bin, and I'm going to back them with a nut to make sure that it stays locked in. So instead of the actual plastic itself, or the 3D printed product itself being what holds it into the bottom, or the Lexan holding it into the bottom, I'm going to use it so that the nut goes all the way through and cranks in through the bottom. Now to do this, what I will do is I've already pre-tapped these, as I mentioned before, go through and then just add this screw onto the top of here. I'm just going to bash through one real quick to show you exactly how I'm going to get it done. And then I'll pause for a second while I get the rest of them. Make sure you got good bits and good screws, guys. They fall off. So there's one, again, pre-hogged in the hole, just till it touches the bottom. Then slap this guy on the bottom of it. Make sure you line the hole up. And boom, there you go. So see how the extra is through the bottom like that? You do that to all four, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this through here, like that, and then back it with the nut itself to make sure that it stays in there. Just like that. So give me 1 second, let me get them all in. The next step will be to get all of the Exo side bars on. I was going to say side cage, but I guess it kind of is. The side bars on. Now, this part would be much easier to do if this shell was clear, but of course it's not clear, so really you're going to have to eyeball it. So again, remember, you're not gluing this thing in there at all right now. You're just soft mounting it just to check to see where you want the part to be. Now, that being said, you can, if you wanted to, you can completely glue these parts to the side of the rig, but for me, I actually want to hard mount them. I want to screw them in using little tiny screws. Now, to do this, because this cage is not clear right now, I pretty much have to eyeball exactly where I think it's going to need to be and put the drill hole there. So for me, it's going to take a bit, but again, like I said, I'm just going to kind of figure, look at the distance, you know, that much before that. I'm going to have to drill the hole probably right about here. And even if you don't get it perfect, this 3D printed material is a little bit pliable. So, you know, if you have to put this in here and then bend the bottom a little bit, it will go. But just do your best to get it done correctly the first time. This one here is going to take me a little bit. Again, I am going to do the same thing as before, where I'm going to use a small drill bit as a leader just to get it in there. And of course, I have already pre-tapped all of these holes so that once I do get the screw mounted in there, it's just bang and it's in. So this one here is going to take me a bit. Just give me 1 minute. With all the screws in, everywhere, all over the place, this thing is actually hard mounted now. So it did take me a while to make sure that all the screws on these things were all done correctly. Again, I used the drill, I used the body reamer. You can see on the bottom, I just want to point this out. Yes, I know those screws are too long. I will get the correct size screws later. I just wanted to get this thing on now today. But this is what it looks like in the end. So you can see here, it does hard mount to the sides. On the top, this thing is not going anywhere, which I really, really like. This is a nice setup. I really like the fact that you can still get underneath these things to zip tie in or get little straps and stuff like that to put across. And again, this is paintable. So what I may do eventually, depending on how this holds up, is body paint this to match the rest of the rig and get the drab paint as well. So you know what? Give me a second. I do want to get this onto the rig itself. Oh, look at this. How long has it been since you've seen CA glue on any of my videos? I just dabbed a little CA glue inside all the joints to make sure they all stay together. So give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to get this thing back on the rig itself. One moment. So there it is. I've got the Knight Custom Exo cage installed directly onto the hardtop, and then of course I have the cage, the Knight Custom's cage, directly installed onto the Exo cage. So that's exactly what it looks like when it's done. So I love how this setup looks. It just meets flush with the back. Really, really nice. On a real Jeep, you'd still be able to get either the tire on the back or the back window to open up. Of course, I've cut it out on this one. And of course, you still get the use of the side windows because I've also got some Knight Custom part to install in there later. So nice protection against the only, well, the front window, but the only window left on the side of the vehicle if this was a real rig. And the install is actually not that difficult to do. Just make sure you take your time and have the correct tools to do it. So that's the way the body looks. I don't have this thing fully hard mounted onto the chassis yet, but let's get an idea kind of what it would look like if I did. We're kind of looking something like that now. So kind of, let me just adjust the camera a little bit. There we go. Kind of looking a lot like a Jeep. So of course I've got, boom, there you go. I love it. And then from the other side, from the back angle, there you go. And that's what it looks like. So this thing is coming along really, really nice. I've got a handful of parts I still need to install on it, get the electronics in it, and take this thing out on the trail. So, man, I'm loving this rig more and more every day. So guys, thank you very much for checking out the channel. I really highly encourage you to head over to the Knight Customs page, tell them Scale Freak told you to stop by, or tell them Scale Freak sent you. Don't tell them Scale Freak told you anything. Just stop by and say Scale Freak sent me, and take a look at the products that he has. Remember on this one here, I've got the Angry Eye front grille. I have the wheel wells for the front and the back. Now I have the Exo cage, and I have the top rack. I also have the proto packs to put in, and I also have the battery relocation kit to still do on this thing, all from Knight Customs. So thank you guys again for watching. Please click on the like button, which is just down here. Click on the subscribe button, which is just above. Of course, you've got your comments. What Knight Customs things have you put on your rig so far? And of course, you've got the ability to share, guys. So please share this throughout your communities. Help me out a whole ton, get this thing out there. So thank you again, guys, for coming to check out the video. Have a great day.